I'm Rich Lieberman. It is the Bay Area Media Pulse. People ask me from time to time, and sometimes they complain or they make observations. Oh, you're too critical on such and such a station. One of my frequent targets, KNBR. And one of the reasons why I'm critical, overly critical, and on purpose, I make no apologies, is because they have gone away from the very essence of what sports talk radio should be about. And they have all these basically E and D listers that they've put on the air because they're so cost conscious, their corporate company Cumulus, that we get the schmucks that we currently have on the air. KNBR is lucky to some degree that they have the 49ers and they have the Giants. Speaking of the Giants, we all know they've had their demise. They've had this August swoon and have played horribly and, have become laughing stocks, et cetera, et cetera. And most of the yutzes on KNBR, they have a little bit of criticism and all that. But they're very tame in terms of actual, meaningful, legit criticism. Not so in the case of Bill Laskey. And I've complimented Laskey before. I've said that he is legit, that he's blunt, that he's real. And mind you, I think he gets paid by the Giants. And I'm sure as all get go, as night is today, and sometimes the other way around, that the Giants aren't thrilled with the fact that Bill Laskey is sometimes too honest and too critical and too blunt. But it's refreshing, especially when you hear the assholes, the yutzes, the finaglers like F.P. Santangelo, who couldn't lead a stripper to a bachelor party, who talks in cliches and is afraid to criticize because he is paid fully by the Giants and he's worried about his budget so he could go out and buy beer and hound younger women who are less than half his age. Bill Laskey is critical and he comes on and he is pointed and he is real. And I believe it. And guess what, folks? Those of you that have listened to Laskey doing post-game Giants games, he's entertaining. And it's not as if he's saying something that's critically stupid. It's critically sane. It makes sense. I'm tired of listening to shills and ruses like F.P. Santangelo. And I'm sorry, Marty Lurie and people like that. I like the fact that Bill Laskey speaks his mind and tempers it with, yes, he's fired up. He says that quite often. I could do without that, but I like Laskey because he doesn't fill the air with utter bullshit, which is what happens when FP Santangelo is on. FP doesn't want to fuck around with his bread and butter, which probably pays his rent at his apartment near the park. Therefore, he goes on the air and makes these stupid little dumb-nailed sort of arguments, if you want to even call it arguments. He's just not real. He's not credible. By the way, he is paid for by the Giants. He went and begged Larry Baer to give him a job as a D-lister, backup, fill-in analyst on the Giants radio broadcasts. And Baer, Big Bird, gave him the job. He doesn't like doing shows when the Giants lose, FP, because he doesn't know how to criticize. He's afraid he might, bite the hand that feeds him, so to speak. And Marty, I don't know what's happened with Marty. I think Marty is starting finally to realize that it's his, last few days on the air, even on 1 day a week phases like Sunday. And, I don't even know if he's coming back next year. Nevertheless, Marty is too much built on baseball nostalgia. And he doesn't really criticize. He doesn't. There's every now and then. With Laskey, you get realness. You get honesty. and integrity and no bullshit. And I think Laskey's in that sort of vein that if they were to dare let him go, fire him, what have you, and it would probably be more Giants oriented than KNBR, because the current pretzel head at KNBR, the alleged press public affairs director, whatever the hell he is, program director, can't really fire anybody because he doesn't have any authority. He's there because he's kind of got a symbolic role, in which case they give him extra pretzels to eat. They're not giving him extra money. But Laskey tells it like it is. It's a cliche, but it's true. And he's honest. And I repeat that, folks, because a lot of these shows are built in within the framework of a client business relationship. And the critical thinking and pronouncements and takes are muted because they don't want to offend the chief client, in this case, the Giants. I'm not saying this as a matter of fact, but I know it's pretty true that the Giants are not thrilled when Laskey goes on there and says what he says. And guess what? I love it. It's honesty, it's credibility right there. And not these ass-kissing KNBR hosts who don't know any better, who meet in what they call the bullpen with the other frat boys and the other Uber drivers who are too busy eating their Subway sandwiches that they got extra leftovers from, and the ass kissers like Copeland, Adam Copeland, who quasi critically puts out little takes, but they're nothing. They're fill in the blank observations. Crap. Laskey was a member of the Giants. He pitched in the 80s. And he's put together a very good resume. Sometimes a little bit too baseball earthy in my book, but he makes up for it after these games where the Giants look hideous, where they look inept and incompetent and like they haven't prepared and have not focused. That's a word that Laskey likes to use. And I appreciate it. And Bill, forget about mentioning me. I know that that's somewhat akin to, talking about cholera at a food bank, because I built on this reputation at KNBR, and they hate mentioning my name because they know that I've been critical of them, and they put these nincompoops on the air that have actually nothing to do with the Giants or the 49ers or the station itself. Another sort of byproduct and negativity of the fact that Greg Papa, and we wish him all the blessings in the world that he gets better soon. At least Papa could criticize, and Papa had cojones and chops and realness and legitimacy, and wasn't Brian Murphy worrying about playing golf with Big Bird so he could get a fucking account built into his already other accounts. Laskey presents credibility. He is critical, and the Giants need that. At least the Giants fans need that. I'm not talking about the booster club members. I'm talking about people who don't have a dog in the fight, but they're passionate and they understand ineptitude and they see this team playing the way it's been playing. Now, I'm not a Giants fan. I don't root for them. I don't root against them. I grew up watching that fucker John Phillips A's, or John Fisher's A's, where that fucker had the audacity to move the team to Vegas. Now they're in Sacramento. But that's neither here nor there. I listen to critical thinking, and I especially like it when somebody like Laskey puts aside the fact that the Giants pay him. And he puts aside the fact that he's not a homer. Of course he's a homer. But when the team is playing so lousy, when its top brass, when its top big hitters are not hitting, or they're making errors and fundamental misdeeds in the field, Laskey will call them out. And it's a credit to Laskey. And we listen. We listen because he's not FP Santangelo. And he doesn't put out bullshit. And he doesn't tell folks when he comes on the air that this is going to be a short show because the Giants fucked up tonight and I don't want to rip them because Larry Bear may not like that and fire my ass. And then I got to go back to the East Coast and pick up women that are half my age there. FP, I know your story, but that's another story. I've alluded to that. People now know why you went to Big Bird and asked him, pleaded with him to hire you back. But again, this is not about that. This is about Laskey. And Bill, we appreciate your honesty, your frankness, your bluntness when it needs to be put out. Now, when the team is playing real well, which it did for 2 months at the beginning of the year, Laskey was equally venomous. But he got to talk about good things because the team was playing well. They were in first place for a brief moment or two. So, yes, he could be a homer. By definition, that job is kind of being a homer. But this is the difference. Laskey knows when to rip and when to question the team's focusedness or lack thereof. And he's real and he's credible and he takes his job seriously. He doesn't put out little, sweet nothings. He's honest. And that's a refreshing take in and of itself. That's why people like Bill Laskey, until he's messed with, which I'm sure he has been, both directly and indirectly, by the Giants and or Cumulus and or KNBR. So folks, enjoy it while you can. I'm not sure you're going to hear the frankness and the reality and the honesty that Bill Laskey evokes after every Giants game on the radio. I say hooray.